Right, everybody. Welcome to lesson 4 of this course that was uh, called the Kabbalah of Meaning, but we really should call it the Kabbalah of Purpose. Progressively, as we've gone through this course, the first lesson taught us that life in the pursuit of pleasures, in the pursuit of indulgences, in the pursuit of even, wonderful memories, etc., will oftentimes leave a person empty. And it is a real epidemic that we can all recognize society is dealing with today. We've never lived in such affluence, had so much. And perhaps you can say that the entire modern Western culture is going through its midlife crisis right now, which is we're kind of at peak affluence and therefore don't know what to do with ourselves. And everybody's looking for causes or things or something, because what everybody recognizes is that ultimately what brings true joy and happiness is not a life in which you have everything, but it's a life of meaning, right? And so that is the Kabbalah of meaning. And we said that in defining meaning, meaning can be found really in the same 4 buckets that define a tree. And that is not by accident that we celebrate. We co-opt the birthday of the tree, and that is because Ki Adam Eitz Hasadeh, a person is meant to draw similarities from the tree more than other species in the fact that a tree has very distinct qualities to it. We said that number one, a tree always grows, constantly growing. If it's alive, it's growing, and that meaning is found in elements of growth, then in productivity. Right. The next thing is that a tree is its entire point and purpose is to produce. Really, the truth is you can find this in other animals, etc., etc. But the reason why trees it's particularly noticeable is because animals become very chaotic, dynamic beings. There's a lot going on. A tree really kind of stays rooted on the spot and focuses on this one thing, extending its leaves so it can bear whatever version of fruit it is. Right? It could be fruitful and productive, which is why that literally what we call that which comes off the tree, we call it produce, right? So productive is really what it's all about. And that's the same thing ourselves. We need to not only grow for ourselves, we need to in order to find meaning, we need to produce. So in the bucket of things that end up making us feel productive is that which gives us meaning. Then we talked about shearing, the fact that a fruit, we said all trees were originally fruit trees. Okay, it's nechmad l'marev tov l'ma'achal, right? Trees that are both beautiful to look at and pleasant to eat from. That this was really until things went awry in the Garden of Eden, but ideally a tree was meant to give off. And it's interesting that God made it in that kind of way that it wants to propagate, it wants to produce. So what does it do? It puts its seed in a really delicious package. It's like, here, enjoy. Just drop the seed on the ground on your way out, and that will actually be beneficial. It's a win-win, right? But it's a win-win because of this nature of sharing. And then ultimately, we said the idea of togetherness. It's interesting. It's if you actually would, and I googled this once. Lonely, right? You know what looks particularly lonely? One tree sitting on top of a hill, right? Because trees grow in forests, and together we said that what makes the redwood such a fascinating thing is that instead of growing their roots down, they grow their roots out, and they each support each other. So we have these 4 buckets which bring great meaning. And yet, after we talked about all that and said that this is okay, good, I'm ready to now fill my life and be a very happy person. Turns out Shlomo Melech was not happy, even with peak meaning. Right, as we said, that you would be hard pressed to find a person that had led a more meaningful life in terms of peak success and peak meaning. With both, as he said, he says that I've done everything, right? More gold and silver, not only for myself, but I made Jerusalem incredibly affluent. He built the Beit HaMikdash, and yet he says Hevel Avalim HaKol Havel. And it's not only him, it's not like Shlomo Melech only was the only one dealing with this, but we find the same way that once people reach peak affluence, they have this sense of emptiness that becomes particularly apparent, and it causes them to have their midlife crisis. It turns out that a lot of us haven't achieved that. I'll say for myself, maybe all the rest of you have, but to Shlomo HaMelech, peak success was something that he did achieve also, and he found a similar midlife crisis. Because who defines what success is? I decided that this is what's called success. Why? Because our Leo Tolstoy wrote right? Ultimately, that however he defines success, somebody else can turn around and say, that's arbitrary. That's just your definition. So is it really just empty? My success is that a million people read my book, but who says that a million people reading my book is actually considered a success? Maybe a million people are reading Narishkeit. A million people read the New York Times. That's not an indication of success, right? So ultimately, is everything, and this is the same thing. Hevel havalim says Shlomo Melech. Is it all arbitrary? Is it all just for us to decide? What happens if somebody says, I'm going to define success by saying how many hours I can sit and veg on the couch? This is success. So even meaning carries a certain element of arbitrariness. And there's a sense of dissatisfaction. Now, why? This is what Shlomo HaMelech is probing, what Leo Tolstoy is grappling. Why should I feel an emptiness? Ultimately, if I've defined this as a success, why am I feeling empty? If I find this meaningful unequivocally, then how am I still feeling empty? Why is this not enough? Please tell me. And really, he's struggling. He couldn't figure out the answer to this. He to the point where he was considering committing suicide. Leo Tolstoy didn't have the answer. Shlomo Melech does have the answer. He says, "You know why? Ultimately, even with a sense of with filling your life with meaning, you don't feel satisfied because you were made for a purpose." Because the world was made on purpose and you play a particular role. And even if you achieve success, even if you achieve success, and even if you achieve meaning, if that meaning is not in line with your purpose, you're going to feel an emptiness. Because a hammer could live a very meaningful life, but it really wants to just hit a nail. And we played a beautiful song written by A.B. Rottenberg that really drove the point home. So about the Sefer Torah that just wanted to be back in the shtibel. Just wanted to have people read from it because that's what it was there for. To read from it, to inspire Jewish people, not to sit there in a glass case and be oohed and odd, right? Getting a lot more attention and a lot more, you can say, honor and respect, being oohed and odd and ogled in this glass case in the museum. But he says, give me a little shtibel any day. That's where I want to be because ultimately that's who I am. That's my purpose. My purpose is bigger than me. And that led us into lesson 3. Lesson 3 told us a very important point. If we have a purpose, then we need to go pursue it. We need to go figure out what that is. What is, in fact, our purpose? Maybe my purpose is to sit on the couch and eat potato chips. How do I know? And so he said, you have to go back and probe. Well, my purpose is part of this great existence, this vast expanse of existence we know as reality, we know as creation, whatever the term you want to use. Now, ultimately, you need to say, why was the world created? And here's the difference between living a life where you're either in pursuit of your own pleasures or even in pursuit of your own meaning versus living a life of purpose. The question is, who's at the center of your universe? Who's at the center of your life? Now, ultimately, even with meaning, too often you're at the center of your own life. You're at the center of the meaning because it's what's meaningful to who? To you. Well, here's an interesting thing. If the reason you're doing Judaism because it's meaningful to you, then are you serving God or are you serving you? This is, by the way, the great draw of paganism. We've talked about this in the past. Why is paganism? If people, we have to imagine that the people in the days of Abraham were not all idiots. And the idea that you can turn to a 3-year-old even today and tell them the story of Abraham recognizing that the sun can't be God and the moon can't be God. Maybe a 3-year-old won't come up with it on their own. That takes an Abraham. But they can kind of get it when you explain it to them, which means that there's it's intuitive that the sun is not the be all end all, and that this wooden this hunk of wood is not a god that deserves my praying to, right? There's the story where Adam smashed all the idols, and his dad said, "What do you do?" He says, "The idols got into a fight, and the biggest one won." He says, "Well, the idols can't do anything. What kind of silliness?" So to which Avram says, and he gave us the line forever. He says, "If only your ears heard what your mouth just said. If the idols can't do anything, why are you serving them?" The answer is because paganism, if there's a whole pantheon of gods, who gets to choose which god I serve? I do. So who's really at the top of the food chain over here? It's me. I get to choose. I get to decide. In other words, this I decided brings me meaning. This, not that. So I choose to be here and to do this because it brings me meaning. So ultimately, you're at the center of your own reality. Fascinatingly, that's never going to give you true satisfaction because you were not created to serve yourself. You were created to serve something greater. And if you spend your time serving yourself, which is Leo Tolstoy saying, I spent my time filling my life with what I consider meaningful to me, and I found that it's empty. Because he never asked himself, maybe life's not about what you need, it's about what somebody needs from you, or some being needs from you, which is that story of the Alter Rebbe. This chassid came and he said, I need all this meaning in my life, and now I'm poor and I can't help my family, I can't help people, I can't marry off kids. I need some money, and I need this, and I need the Hashem's brachas. And the Alter Rebbe responded, and it seems to be callously, he responded, did you ever stop to ask, I'm hearing all the things that you need, but do you ever stop to ask, what does Hashem need from you? The result of that is he fainted. But when he woke up, he lived a far more unfettered life, because ultimately, life is not that struggle that you have to say, wait a minute, am I filling today with meaning? What happens if right now that opportunity was revoked from me? So now I can't fill my day with meaning because what I assumed meaning was, I'm not wealthy enough to pursue it. So now my life is empty. Or this opportunity that I presented, I determined meaning would be for me to study Torah, and I never got that opportunity because I never went to yeshiva. My life is empty. My ship has sailed. Well, if you turn it around and say, no, 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 Hashem created you and put you in a perfect situation to do that which you can achieve. Now go figure it out and live beyond yourself. Live a transcendental life. Because ultimately, if you live with yourself at the center of your own life, that gets in the way of a lot of things. Because if that's the general attitude, that we're all living at the center of our own life, then the people we love most are the people we're going to have the most friction with. Because you're going to go ahead.
I don't understand. Um, I'm coming to Judaism. I'm coming to Chabad. I'm searching because I'm finding so much. It's meaningful. Now you're saying that's wrong.
No, no. I'm saying that's not the ultimate determination. You're not doing it only because it's meaningful. You're doing it because in this you're finding your transcendental purpose. And of course, that's going to be one of the ways you can tell that you're honing in on something is that it's not only meaningful, but it's substantive, and it's bringing that sense, that rightness. No, we're not saying a life of deprivation and asceticism. We're actually going to go further with this, but we're going to say if your only divining rod, right, if your only way to measure what is a worthy pursuit is something that I decided is meaningful without saying, is this what I'm here to do? Right? Somebody could say, my whole life is meaningful. I'm going to, in other words, are you an employee or are you a teammate? Is life one big ATM to draw out of it whatever you want? Or what is it that I can contribute to this? How am I part of? And of course, that's going to be meaningful. That's going to be the most meaningful. That's what we're saying. This is not in the place of meaning. Turns out this is the most meaningful. Just like we're not saying this in the place of happiness. Or you can either pursue happiness or you can pursue meaning or purpose. No, turns out pursuing purpose is the greatest sense of meaning, which will lead to the greatest sense of happiness. It's about reframing the perspective. Now, here's the thing, and this is lesson 4. And I actually enjoy this lesson, both in studying it and preparing it and sharing it, perhaps the most, because we're about to get practical and we're about to talk about something that as a musician, you'll particularly appreciate, but I think we all. Being good gets boring. There's an issue. If every single day, right, you get up and you do what you're supposed to, right? You wake up, you go, you daven, you do, rinse, repeat, do it again the next day, do it again the next day. How ultimately there's a concern here that doing what I'm supposed to every single day, day in, day out, even if I could achieve that, I am then steering down the barrel of monotony. This is what you're serving up on the table, what you're serving up. Day in, day out, do what God says to us as per the Torah. Do it. Don't deviate. And in other words, you're telling me that the ideal way to live is this monotonous cycle of waking up, doing the right things, not doing the wrong things, go to sleep, do it all again tomorrow? Where's the drama? Where's the action? Where's the vitality and the vivaciousness of this? Now, here's the amazing thing. It's everywhere and it's everything. Living a Jewish purposeful life is so incredibly vital and full of vitality and life that to live differently is empty. And let's talk about it. How do we keep all this fresh? How do we keep a life of meaning and purpose fresh and not monotonous, because we really are we have one book that tells us what to do, and our agenda is to do what it says in this one book. It could sound very monotonous. Now, there's 613 mitzvahs with thousands of details to them, but ultimately, it's all kind of prescribed, and all you're going to do it and just do it well and do it right, and then tomorrow do more of the same. No, that's not the fabric of life. And we'll use a metaphor here, and then we'll understand how the metaphor translates. I can speak very purposefully. In other words, my words, the content of my words can be with a tremendous purpose and with very impactful content, and I can do so in one of two ways. I can speak it very monotonously, and I'll tell the point. How like we've all had teachers that have done this, and they're speaking like that, and it's not the content of what they're saying could be very, very important and fascinating and impactful, and everybody's asleep within 3.5 minutes. What's missing there? It's not the purpose that's missing. It's not that it's not filled with content. There's no cadence, there's no rhythm. Words need to live. Speech need to have a cadence and a rhythm of vitality to them, ups and downs, pauses and starts and goes and peaks and valleys. And it's remarkable how necessary that is in giving over your point. It's in everything, including Judaism. Do you get up to the Torah and read the Torah? If you do so, you are not fulfilling the basic obligation of reading the Torah. Because even if you're pronouncing every word perfectly, so the message is coming across, if you are not adding if you're not adding the cadence of life to the message, then it could have a tremendous amount of purpose. You're still doing it wrong.
The song.
Everything is
an aria to
it. Yes, and that's the truth. I tell this to bar mitzvah boys all the time. I say, you don't even realize, because when I'm telling them about, like, for the etnachta, the halfway point, or the sof pasuk, the etnachta ends high, sof pasuk comes low. So you don't even realize you do that when you speak. When you want to indicate, you want to come to a pause in how you speak, but you want to indicate I'm not finished yet, you add a little upward lilt. I went to the store, I bought milk and bread and cheese. You bring that indicates, that's what I said. Adults can't stand teenagers because they never bring their sentences to an end. Every sentence ends like this, and it's incredibly frustrating. It's like, stop even, be confident, end your sentence, come to a conclusion. But speech shows that really in every aspect of life, there's a cadence and there's a rhythm, that you can't just rely that that the content has purpose and meaning, but that the vessel in which it's contained also has to have a rhythm and a cadence and have peaks and valleys. It has to be dynamic, because life is that way. So if we are talking about that, what we do, our actions in our life and our pursuits, is the content, and that has to be purposeful, then what is the package? What is the vessel? Time. Time cannot be monotonous. Day in, day out cannot be the same thing, rinse, repeat. Then you can say, what do you mean? I'm living a very purposeful life, but you're giving a very monotonous speech over here. You're filling your day with content, but day after day is the same thing. It's one of the reasons I argue with my sister that I wouldn't want to live in LA. There's no change of seasons. Every day is a carbon copy of the day before. Time is like a little, it's just there's no progression. And she responds, yeah, we picked the right season and we hit pause. That's well, but ultimately, the arguments this way or that way. But the point is, time is meant to have rhythm, a cadence, a vitality. Hence, the Jewish calendar. The Jewish calendar, that no day is exactly like the day before. No day is meant to be lived like the day before it or the day after it. Because your pursuit of purpose needs to have cadence, needs to have rhythm, needs to have peaks and valleys. It needs to be living. It cannot be monotonous, right? It needs to have inflections and fluctuations. And so, and importantly, here's what comes out from this. This is built into the fabric of time itself. What we're going to see is one of the key differences in Judaism versus secular outlook on time is whether dates, milestones, events are arbitrary or they're intrinsic. So let's jump straight in and I'll explain what I mean about this, okay? This is when if you think about it, if your heartbeat is the rhythm of your, in a sense, of your own physical vitality, your heart is the most dynamic part of your body. It's constantly beating. Now, there's two things that the heart does simultaneously. First of all, it's never silent or stopped. That's death. But it has to do two things. There needs to be its steady rhythm, boom, 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 boom. But there also has to be the allowance for a quickening of the heart, excitement, or heartbreak. There needs to be the steady cadence, and then there needs to be the harmony and melody, the ups and downs of life. And it's perfectly represented in the heart, and it's also perfectly represented in Jewish time. There's the daily practice, and something we'll talk about, that there's we bring meaning into our day by following the rhythmic process of the day, with the structure that we have in Judaism, right? Morning carries it with it certain responsibilities, and the afternoon carries with it certain responsibilities, and the evening and night carries certain responsibilities. There's a daily rhythm to life. But then there's the quickening of the heart, happy days on the Jewish calendars, and then there's the sad days on the Jewish calendar. So in truth, basically, we have two aspects, but we're not going to so much focus on that first aspect, the pursuit of purpose that is bringing that stability and structure. That needs to be there. That steady heartbeat, the heartbeat that you need to count on. As we say, timidim kisidram. One of the reasons that we have an eternal fast on the 17th of Tammuz is because that was the day that they could not bring the daily offering. For years and years, for hundreds of years, they were bringing the daily offering exactly at the same time, same offering every single day. And even through a terrible siege of the Romans, and then on the one day that the Romans eventually stopped it because they were sending down a basket to get even and bribe the Roman guard on the other side of the siege. They would send down a huge amount of money, and they would send up one perfectly clean animal to bring in the offering. So even through the years of the siege, they were able to keep up the daily offering. Then this man was found; he was executed, and that day a pig came over the wall instead. And that was the first day that the offering was not be able. That steady truth and connection with God broke, an arrhythmia. And that day became forever a terrible fast day for the Jewish people, because there needs to be that steady beat. There needs to be that it says that somebody comes to shul every day, and then one day doesn't shul. It says Hakadosh Baruch Hu shoal acharav, that God Himself asks after him, "Where were you?" See, it's not just a rabbi, but it says that God Himself says, we got a steady thing going, right? Having said that, Yiddishkeit also layers on, not as an arbitrary thing, but in a very necessary and vital way, the special moments and our special dates. Now, this infuses purpose, right? So the purposeful behavior is the things we said we pursue in the service of God, but this infuses that purposeful behavior with necessary vitality. So here, to give you a sense, here's the key difference. Is Rosh Hashanah like Plymouth Rock or like the historic Mount Wilson Observatory? Right? And if that makes no sense to you, that's fine. I've achieved my point. If you took your child to see Plymouth Rock, right? What would you tell them about this? This is a very special rock. It's such a special rock that the pilgrims from Europe, they put as their goal, we have to get to Plymouth Rock. That's what makes it so special. Or what was really the truth, the pilgrims were not aiming for Plymouth Rock. They were actually aiming for Virginia. They ended up getting a little bit thrown off course, and they landed at Plymouth Rock. So is Plymouth Rock inherently a special rock? Or did events conspire to then make it a rock that now carries a significance to us? Did the rock make the event, or the event make the rock? The event made the rock. Plymouth Rock carried no value, no intrinsic value whatsoever. It was just another rock among rocks until the pilgrims landed on it, and then this rock stands out in history. Now, a different tourist location is the historic Mount Wilson Observatory, where a fellow named Edwin Hubble discovered galaxies and forever changed the way we look at the universe. And it sits at the top of the mountains in the San Gabriel Mountains in California. Now, did it just so happen that Edwin Hubble was walking on a hike, he tripped and fell and said, oh, I might as well build a thing over here? No, he deliberately sought out that space because the conditions there made it the ideal place, made it the perfect place to build the observatory. So in that case, did the rock build the observatory, or did the observatory build the rock? In that case, it was the rock that built the observatory. It was a place with ideal weather conditions, high up in the hill, clear view of the sky. They said, this is an ideal place. This location is an ideal location to do what we want to do. Very different than Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock, the events happened to it. This Mount Wilson, it was what drew the circumstance to itself. Dates on the calendar, are they Plymouth Rockian? Are they Mount Wilson Observatorian? So it depends if you look at it from the perspective of the secular world or the Jewish world. How does the secular world look at dates? Very much Plymouth Rockian. Why? Let's look at some of the dates on the secular calendar. Okay? 4th of July. 4th of July, right, is when they declared independence, right? 4th of July is what we consider the birth of our country. Now, the founding fathers, did they sit there and they say, you know when we have to finish this? We must declare on the 4th of July. Because, by the way, a hot dog tastes better on the 4th of July. No, silliness, right? It happens to be they got it done or whatever it is. They figured out when they got together. It turns out, oh, it's the 4th of July. You know, so the event very clearly made the day. What about October 12th, Christopher Columbus Day? No, it just happens to be the day that Christopher Columbus's boat bumped into the shores of the New World. Veterans Day, Mother's Day, Armistice Day, Martin Luther King Day. All these days are completely arbitrary. There's nothing intrinsically special about the day until the event occurred. Now the event has value, the day has value, right? So it's assigned value. The event assigned value to that particular rock. Judaism looks at it differently. Days have, like Mount Wilson, have intrinsic value. This is an entirely different perspective because this is what we're saying. Ultimately, A note is not chosen arbitrarily, it's sought out. Because this is just the right note. The note draws me. I don't draw the note. The day on the calendar for Jewish events is the day that God designated from what that the event will occur. The day draws the event versus the event drawing. It's intrinsic to the date. This particular concept, this particular element of this particular flavor of our pursuit of our purpose on this day takes on a different flavor, not because of an event that comes later to make that day, because the day demands this particular thing. Our Jewish dates are intrinsic. They are Mount Wilson Observatorium. Let me show you how obvious this is. Would it be surprising to you if a town says that due to rain on the schedule, we are moving our July 4th festivities to July 5th? When it's a clear day, the sky is going to be beautiful, balmy weather. Would that surprise you to read?
No.
No, that would be very pragmatic and obvious and wonderful. Because a hot dog tastes the exact same on October 4th, on July 4th as it tastes on July 5th. But imagine this, and I saw this on the door of a Reconstructionist temple. Due to Rabbi's absence, Sabbath services will be held on Wednesday. Yeah. Now, how ludicrous does that sound? What does that tell you, though?
But that was at the beginning of the creation of the world. But there are holidays that happen because of an event happened on that day, and so it's not the same thing.
Oh, we're going to push the envelope, and you're going to find out that those are more like Shabbos than you would think. Very good. Thank you. You're tossing me the meatball. Okay. But as we can see already, Shabbos, right? And by the way, let's stick with the analogy about the hot dog on July 4th and July 5th. And let's read a fascinating thing about the intrinsic nature of Shabbos and how much it affects everything just because it's Shabbos. Text 1, page 103. Famous story of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who lived next to the Roman consul, right? They actually lived together in the city of Caesarea. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi did a lot for the Jewish people because he, instead of kind of having this purist attitude of we're not going to engage with the Romans are the oppressors, etc., etc. He says, let's be diplomatic, and if this situation is what it is, we can get a lot by actually building a diplomatic ties. So he invited the Caesar to his house for Shabbos, right? Like any good rabbi, come to our house, right? Come have a Shabbos meal. Right. Well, yeah, that's a little different. That was, that was before. That was, how do you say it? How do you say it in Latin? Before the fact, but not after the fact. Unfortunately, here is like after the fact. The guy's in already. We're going to do what I can to whatever it is. Here they should before different elements, but we're not going to delve too much into the politics. But let's all agree that they should not have done that. But either way, the Roman emperor comes. This is the story told in the Talmud, and he tries a cholent, chamin. He's blown away by the delicious. He says, "I have the best chefs in the entire region, and I've never tasted something so delicious. Your wife must give the recipe to my chef." Of course, we'd be honored. Comes back a couple days later to arrest Rabbi Yehuda Nasi for the belligerence and the insult. And the Nasi turns and says, "Why?" So here we'll pick up the story at this point. The Roman emperor asked, is Roman emperor, but really means the consul, means the representative of the emperor there. Asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, why do the dishes of Shabbos produce such an enticing aroma? Basically, he says, why is it there was so much better in your house? You must have been holding back. You left out a spice. You left out a spice. You must have left out a spice. He says, you know what? You're right. I did hold back a spice. My wife did not give you the full recipe. One major spice, entirely integral. He answered, we have a special spice, and it's called Shabbos. We place it in the Shabbos dishes, and it gives off this very special aroma. It says you're never going to be able to mimic this spice. And anybody who's ever had a cholent on a Tuesday will tell you, no, it does not taste the same.
Yeah, it's not the same.
It's not the same. There is, while by them, their secular holidays have just an assigned value. So an event occurred on this day. Let's do it on the anniversary of it every year. Makes the most sense. Or, for example, Mother's Day, second Sunday in May, Monday in May, right? Is that any special day? Is that intrinsically connected to mothers? No, we as a society decided to pick a day where we're all going to come together. And yes, when you do that, it ends up causing the subconscious feeling. It does affect you, but it's not saying what we say, that there is an intrinsic value. Shabbos is not another day. Shabbos is Shabbos. The food tastes Shabbostic, right? There's a beautiful story of the Ruzhiner, of Yisrael of Ruzhin, a great tzaddik, a great Rebbe. And he was in Kedah, even as a young boy. A lot of times, the Rebbe's only developed into Rebbe's when they got older, but as kids, they were kids. The Ruzhiner was a unique child. And there's many stories of him as a child. The Ruzhiner his Rebbe was learning with him from the Mishnah. It says, what happens if you're lost in the desert and you lost track of the days? How do you observe Shabbos? And the Mishnah gives many different things. He was perplexed. He says, what do you mean, how do you lose track of Shabbos? How can you lose track of Shabbos? He says it's because he doesn't have a calendar. So there's Ruzhiner, this little boy with his he says, look up at the sky. The sky is different on Shabbos. What do you mean? How could you think Shabbos is any other day? You look up at the sky, it's a different sky on Shabbos. So not everybody's a Yisrael of Ruzhin, but he was sensitive enough to see that there is something intrinsically different. Shabbos is Shabbos. Now, so basically, what do we say? And this is very powerfully put. Shabbos, we don't create the holiness. The holiness of Shabbos is not something we create. The holiness of Shabbos is something we enter. It's always there. It always was and always will be. We enter the holiness of Shabbos, the cadence of time. This is an up. This is an up. And it's an up. Whether you got there or not, it's an up. This is an up note. This is a note that demands you to meet it at where it is. It's not Friday. It's Shabbos. Now, it turns out that it's not just Shabbos. We can all, the easier, and we're going to expand the envelope, would it be surprising to you that this is also true about Yom Kippur? That on Yom Kippur, everybody's neshama feels that today is something special. There's a beautiful story, true story, about a child who was taken away in communist Russia from his home, did not grow up with any Yiddishkeit. Only had when he was very young, became a captain in the Red Navy. But here goes the story. This is a translation. I didn't have time before the class to find the recording of Avram Fried singing this, which would have been a lot more pleasant to your ears. But here goes nothing. I'm going to try to sing text 2. Because you can either read it as a poem, but I'm going to try to at least sing it along. This was originally written in Yiddish. So you guys are suffering from 2 layers removed. Number one, it's not going to be sung in its original language. It's also not going to be sung by its original singer. You're going to have to bear with me, and I'm going to read it in English. But it is a story about this captain on the ship who pulls into the port of Odessa, and something is pulling at him, and he can't figure it out. He abandons his ship. He's the captain of the ship. He abandons it, and he's running like a madman through the streets of Odessa, trying to figure out what is wrong, what he's being pulled towards. So he weaves through the streets, hard on the trail, the melody stronger and stronger. What is its message? What is its tale? His heart can't hold out that much longer. He spots a babushka walking along, crossing a street in the middle. Can she decipher the mysterious song? Can she solve this great riddle? Grandma, he says, please listen to me. This song in my ears is quite bruising. The melody's haunting, it won't let me be. I fear that my mind I am losing. Your face tells me, comes the reply, that you are a Jew, my dear skipper. You're churning, you're burning, I'll tell you why. Tonight is the night of Yom Kippur. And he goes, and he's hearing the Kol Nidre, and he bursts into shul, and he doesn't go back because his neshama finally the uh the last line in Yiddish is only it's only Yontav Erlich can write so poignantly in Yiddish. Anigin gesuchen gefunden zurück mein altere verlorene Glauben. I went looking for a song and I found my old lost faith. That this fellow felt Yom Kippur in the year, not because he observed it, not because he knew what to observe, because the day is the day of Yom Kippur, and it calls all souls. Now it's interesting that there is a more modern statistical proof of this as well. I'm going to call it. Rabbi Shlomi Schwartz was originally a Chabad rabbi, then went a little we still love him. We'll still keep him. There's a few that went Meshiga, like Zalma Schachter or whatever it is. Others that went a little too far off the reservation. Somebody said, "Look, we can't let you continue keep the label. You can keep the label Chabadnik and Chassid, etc., but that you're the director of Chabad when you're a little bit. This is was the rabbi at UCLA who then started the L'chaim Center." Which was very successful and great guy. And we have his book on the shelf. This is actually a direct quote from it. The pages of the book are painted in tie dye just because that's his style. But he was known. His name was Shlomo Schwartz, and he went by Schwartzy. He was an incredibly charismatic guy. We talked about him in the beginning. He was the one who got Dennis Prager to give his lectures on happiness, etc. So he was speaking with a professor at UCLA, and this is what the professor told him. He says, the doctor told me on page text 3 that on average of 5 people per day experience breakdown and are brought to the NPI. That's his clinic. A few are Jewish. But he said, I've noticed that every single year around the Jewish holidays, the Jewish admittance goes up dramatically. And on one day of each year, admittance spikes closer to 20 people, with 15 of them being Jewish. Which day is that, I asked. The doctor said Yom Kippur. But here, Sir Shlomo says, and here's the punchline. Each year when admittance to NPI went up on Yom Kippur, it was on the Hebrew calendar date, the 10th day of Tishrei, not a consistent day on the secular calendar. It was the Jewish date that was causing this to happen. And the Jews who were brought in on Yom Kippur didn't even know it was Yom Kippur. It's not like they were coming in because they felt the guilt or whatever it is. They couldn't explicate why it is that today was causing them a sense of such heaviness. And they didn't have a release because they didn't have they didn't know to go to shul or whatever it is, and they were just experiencing the heaviness of the day. He says it's a remarkable thing. He says this is happening in a clinic. This is not happening. Some rabbis theorizing about it. This is happening in a clinic that Jews on the day of Yom Kippur are walking in and saying something's up. So this is Yom Kippur being Yom Kippur, whether you're involved in it or not. Yom Kippur is intrinsic. It has an intrinsic quality to it. Right? It stirs the soul. It awakens the heart. Now, you said, but, okay, even Yom Kippur, maybe you can get behind the idea that Yom Kippur was set aside from creation, right? Daniel, let's play devil's advocate. Not devil's advocate. Let's play the saying that, okay, Shabbos I can say is a day that's intrinsic. Yom Kippur I can say is a day that's intrinsic. Pesach. Pesach is Pesach because it happened to be that they left on the 15th of Nisan. We eat matzah because that happens to be the day right? That they walked out of Egypt with the bread on their shoulders and didn't have time to rise, and so it became matzah.
Make the date.
Right. So it's the
not the date in intrinsic value.
right one. So the event made the day, right? And the observances are because of the events that occurred on that day.
That's what I was
So the matzah is after the fact, right? After the date, matzah, and after the fact that they carry matzah, that's why we eat matzah on Pesach, right? Which would make the argument, that would make the argument that the event makes the day. Until the event occurred, that day wasn't anything special. There was no connection to matzah before they actually carried out what eventually became matzah. Or is it? Because here's fascinating, black and white in the Torah. Black and white in the Torah. The first Seder that the Jewish people ever had was where? In Egypt, before they left. Okay. What was on the menu of that Seder? What did God tell them to have? Matzah. Matzah hadn't happened yet. Matzah was only the event that made matzah didn't happen yet. That's happening tomorrow. The day that them carrying the matzah out, and hereby making, God gives them the menu the night before and says matzah tonight.
Didn't they make it on that, or just before the first Seder?
The matzah that was because it was the circumstance. They were running out of Egypt. They put the bread on their back and didn't have time to rise. It became matzah. That was going to happen 12 hours from now. That hasn't happened yet. They haven't left Egypt. They're eating their Seder.
Regular bread?
No, with matzah. But the advent that makes matzah something hasn't even happened yet. There it is in the Torah, an anomaly. God tells them to eat matzah. Wait, what is matzah? Matzah is only going to get significance, is only going to be assigned significance in a half a day from now. And yet God's already said, and here's what's even more fascinating. They're not the first ones who ate matzah on Pesach. We had in the Torah portion last week that Abraham goes and he sees 3 guests, right? And he invites them to his tent. And what does he serve them? The Torah says it black and white. Ugot matzot. He gives them matzah because it was Pesach.
It wasn't Pesach.
That day was the 15th of Nisan. The day the 3 angels came to visit him was the 15th of Nisan, and Abraham gave them matzah because matzah is connected to this day, the 15th of Nisan, because this day is the day of redemption from the moment of creation. This note means this, even if the song hasn't been written yet. Days have a cadence.
Feast of Esther, or how about the day of Hanukkah when they discovered
all of them? That's the different way we live it. The events don't make the day. The day draws out the event. The event that occurs is a fruition, a manifestation of the potential of this day. This day was always a day for this thing. And on this particular year, it came to its fullest fruition, but it always is. How many events occurred on Tisha B'Av that don't show you that it's not a random thing, that Tisha B'Av is a day set aside for suffering and pain? So if it's the event that made the day, then there is a huge amount of coincidence.
The Feast of Esther would be on that day.
The day itself drew out.
That would be on that day.
The day of Hanukkah, as we're going to find out, is a day that draws out this. Hanukkah brought about the salvation. Rosh Hashanah brings out God's coronation. These are days where elements are playing, notes are playing in the spirituality of the world that draw this kind of feeling. Yom Kippur, Shabbos, each of these days are playing certain notes And instead, it's not our actions that give the day significance. Our actions are the protocol for this day, because this day demands this. This day is this. And our actions is our response. Our observances and our traditions are our response to the essential intrinsic nature of this day. The 15th of Nisan, as the 15th of every month, is our peak day. The 15th of the month, as we're going to see in general, that there are elements in the spiritual world, right? We follow the moon. 15th of every month, when the moon is at its fullest, is our peak moment. It's our peak moment, which is why Pesach happens on the 15th of the month. Purim leads into the 15th of the month. Sukkot happens on the 15th of the month. Our peak month is the month of Nisan. It's the month of our liberation. So the peak day of our peak month, that's our day. That's our liberation day. That's the day that we bust out. We have the ability to bust out of our own Egypt. Every day on Pesach, we're not celebrating, and this is the key aspect of it. Are you observing an event that occurred 3,000 years ago at the Seder? If you are, you've missed what it says straight in the Haggadah. It says the Rambam, you do not have the right to celebrate this day as if this was something. Therefore, we all, because bechol dor v'dor, in every generation, we're the ones who leave Egypt on this day. This is our liberation day, because the 15th of Nisan from day one was liberation day. On the year 2448, it came to its most peak fruition with the Jews leaving Egypt. But every day before, every year before, and every year after, it is also a day of liberation. It is our day to live that liberation. That's the way we live our life, not arbitrary commemoration of certain events. We are in tune with the cadence of the calendar, with the cadence of time, with the rhythm. And what that means is I can be brushing my teeth, but on this day, it's a whole different brushing of teeth. For those that are familiar, the Rebbe was, you can either call the Rebbe the best hype man in history, just rah-rah, or that the Rebbe was saying something profound. Why? Because here's the way every Farbrengen would start on any holiday. This is the most important day on the calendar. And the Rebbe would go on for about 40 minutes explaining why this was the most important day on the calendar. And then would come the very next day of the holiday, and the Rebbe would begin, today is the most important day on the calendar. And go on for another 40 minutes why this day was the most important day on the calendar. He's like, wait a minute, what's going on over here?
Those numbers. Number 3, most important number.
Right?
Most important number. I think every number is the most important number.
Because every number has an intrinsic value, and in its value, it is the most important. When you're on this day, there is no more important day in existence, because today I need to be doing what this day is about, and this is the day for that. The famous story about the fellow in the Holocaust who was in the concentration camp, had smuggled in a pair of tefillin, but never had the opportunity to put the tefillin on because you have to wait for daybreak. An appel would happen before daybreak. And it was the job of the capos to gather them all up and to bring them for the appel. So he had the tefillin. Now, this particular capo found out that he had the tefillin. And as a Jew, knows that so close and yet so far. He has a pair of tefillin in the camp, but there's never been the opportunity to. At one point or another, this fellow did a favor for the capo. He did something, he got on the capo's good side, and the capo turns to him and says, to repay you, I'm going to look the other way one morning by the appel, and you can go put on your tefillin. So what did this man do? He immediately ran to the Rav in the camp, the halachic authority that was in the camp, and he says, what day do I cash in this chip? Should I do it the day before Yom Kippur? Should I do it on my birthday? What day is the most important day for me to cash in this chip? The one time that I've got to get to put on tefillin. What day should I cash this in? What are the Rav Salam? Today. Today is the most important day. Today is the most important day because today is the only today that's going to happen. Are you in rhythm? Are you maximizing the potential of today? Are you hitting the note of today as perfectly as you can? Yiddishkeit, we live this way. No day is the same. There's no such concept. Not only is there no day the same, but honestly, there's no second the same. There's a great article written, and I shared it back and then. It was, and you'll see in a second when I'm trying to go through this. It was the year 2009, and July 8th, 2009. And a Kabbalah rabbi wrote an article. He says that somebody told me that at 12:34 and 56 seconds on July 8th, 2009, the clock will read for that one perfect second 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's never going to happen again because it will never be 7, 8, 9, 07, 08, 09. So you have this one moment to have the 1, 2, 12, 34, 56, 56 seconds of 7, 8, 9. So cute. Okay. Most people lived that moment and it didn't mean anything to them. And the rabbi says, wait a minute. He started thinking about it. He says, you know what that drives home the point? He says that one split second and it's never going to happen again. That the very next second, 12:34 and 57 seconds of 7, 8, 9 won't either ever happen again. Every moment is a unique moment in history. Every moment is holy. It's holy time. Time is holy as far as Judaism is concerned. It's a note that you cannot miss because it's a note that you cannot capture again. It's a note that demands of you, engage with me correctly. It's not arbitrary. It's not think about it. We are changing the perspective we have on everything. Till now, we were talking about pursuits, and we said arbitrary pursuits are inherently arbitrary. It's whatever value you give them. No, your pursuits have intrinsic value because you were created for a specific purpose. And if you're engaged in that purpose, you're fulfilling. Then you are maximizing your value. And if you're engaged in other things, then maybe it feels good in the moment, but you're going to feel an emptiness because life has intrinsic value. Now we say time has intrinsic value, and to be in tune with that imbues your purpose, that you're the pursuits, with an entirely another element of intrinsic value. You're hitting the right note. The way you daven on Shabbos, you could be davening on Sunday, you could be davening on Monday. Every day is a different davening. Every time it's different. How can this be monotonous? Every moment is an entirely different moment. What's monotonous about this? I get to play endless, beautiful music across the expanse of all of my life. Every day is a different note. Because not only that, every Rosh Hashanah is a different Rosh Hashanah. This is Rosh Hashanah of the year 5786. There will never be another Rosh Hashanah 5786. Whatever 5786 is, and by the way, I'm a different person. So even if I'm coming to Rosh Hashanah next year and I'm not necessarily in tune with what's the difference between 86 and 87, I'm 67, by the way. But I am not the same person. My engagement, my harmony to Rosh Hashanah's melody is going to be different. Because time is holy. Text 4. When Abraham ate matzah on Pesach, 1,500 years before Pesach was going to be something. Not 1,500 years. 800 years before Pesach was going to be something. Abraham, here's the text 106. Abraham wasn't celebrating an event in the future. He was tapping into the spiritual energy of freedom that was and always is present at that time of year. The energy of liberation is encoded in the composition of the annual cycle. Matzah is a bread of liberation. Why? Because it costs $70 a pound. No, because it speaks to your humility in this moment, that you're, in a sense, on God's bandwagon. That is tied to the liberation, the idea that God's coming to liberate you. Matzah was apropos for Avram to eat even before the maximal fruition of this moment of liberation, which was going to happen in the year 2448. Didn't happen yet, but it didn't mean the 15th of Nisan wasn't already this energy, and Avram was tapping into it. So, as we talked about, right, Shabbos, we observe the day of Shabbos differently, not just because God says, I want a day in which you practically free yourself up from other things. So I'm going to pick a day and we're going to spend time on that day. That could be arbitrary, like any, meeny, miny, mo. Just like Mother's Day is the day we're going to clear out all the rest of the distractions or whatever it is, and today's going to be the day to focus on Mom. So once a week we're going to have a day we focus on God. We're going to call it Shabbat. No, something different is happening in the fabric of reality on this day, and it demands of you to respond to it. There's a protocol for today. How do we know this? Because if it was all about, as it were, God, etc., then what seems to be we're going in the opposite direction. Shabbos, every day of the week, we're not really supposed to indulge in food, right? We're supposed to practice a certain amount of asceticism. Don't be that into you. Don't be a pig. Don't stick your face into the trough and gorge, right? Don't have a 5-course meal on an average Tuesday. It's not a very Jewish thing. Shabbos, pull out all the stops, right? This is the old, it's a cute little joke. It says this chassid comes home, from shul, takes off the shtreimel Shabbos, pulls out a barrel of one, like a massive thing, and makes kiddush, drinks it all down, 2 chalas, makes a mighty, and polishes them both off, a bowl of salad, an entire fish, the soup, the chicken, the this, he's eating comes then dessert, 3 pieces of cake, 5 slices of fruit, and then it comes to the ice cream. He gets to the last scoop of ice cream and he looks at it, says, it's tough to be Jewish. But he's not wrong. This is being Jewish. To enjoy. We said, wait a minute, if this is a day for God, like, does God sit there and eat ice cream? Like, why is this the way we observe Shabbos? Because Shabbos is a day where the spiritual veil gets pulled, the veil between the divine world and our world gets pulled away a little bit, and our world gets suffused with a little bit more godliness. The Rishonah saw it in the sky, but it also means that our food becomes a little bit more holy. The rest of the week, this food doesn't have the same holiness that it has on Shabbos, and so we stay away because it can pull us down. It can tamper with our holiness. On Shabbos, it's been suffused with holiness. We're celebrating God by celebrating the food that He put in the world and is imbued with His holiness. It's because the very fabric of reality changes on Shabbos. The same food that we were supposed to stay away from, the indulgence of it, kosher and obviously all that, but that we're meant to otherwise stay away from. Today, no, we're meant to engage. We're meant to engage and enjoy because the fabric of reality has changed. So ultimately, what we're basically finding out is that we have a different attitude towards time. Here's a beautiful analogy. We're going to go on a journey through life. The journey is through a barren wasteland of spirituality. And we need to have inspiration. We need to give ourselves something to water our soul as we navigate this barren wasteland of spirituality. Our soul needs a little sustenance as it goes through the desert, right? So why so many metaphors? In fact, the original metaphor of the Jewish people on a journey was quite literally them passing through a desert. They literally lived the metaphor of 40 years in the desert. But we each live that kind of in our lives, right? We're trying to get from point A to point B, and we're passing through this barren wasteland. And you can either look at it in place or you can look at it in time, our calendar year. Now, here's two approaches, and this is the Hasidic metaphor. A king is sending his child off to go navigate this barren wasteland to get to the other side. Now he turns to the child and says, instead of me giving you enough water from here to make it through, I'm going to give you a map that's going to show you where all the hidden wells are along the journey, so that you can arrive at the well, top yourself up, draw what you need from that well, and move on to the next well. God gives us the calendar. And in the calendar, he shows us where are the wells. The wells are spiritual, where the spirituality is bubbling up towards the surface. Each one with its own unique tonic, its own unique note to help us carry to the next moment. That's what the Jewish calendar is. God is not saying, observe these days, give them holiness. No, he's saying, these are the wells that I'm providing you to draw from, to give you the vitality you need to traverse your year. Text 6, wells in time. Each festival, page 108, each festival marks a point in our journey through time at which our Heavenly Father supplies us with the resources that nurture our spiritual lives. On Passover, we are granted the gift of freedom. On Shavuot, God gives us His Torah, our charter, as His kingdom of priests and a holy people. Rosh Hashanah is the day on which God first became king. On Yom Kippur, God granted us the gift of Teshuvah, the capacity to rectify and transform a deficient past. In other words, each one of these holidays, you're drinking. This is from the well of freedom. This is from the well of rectification. Right? This is the well of strength. This is the well of victory. Right? Hanukkah marks the salvation of the Jewish soul, the triumph of light and purity over darkness and adulteration. The miracle of Purim, the salvation of the Jewish body, as it was with all the festivals and special dates and periods on a calendar. So, for example, you get to Hanukkah, right? By the way, we're about to turn to a few pages in this book that make just having the copy of this as a reference is worth the price of the whole course. So first of all, here gives us a sense of how you can look at Hanukkah. Okay? Understanding that Hanukkah is not a day that we created with our victory. I mean, by us, I mean the Maccabees, right? We might as well take credit for that. Why not? Right? That we didn't create Hanukkah, that we then layered on some observances to commemorate. We do not commemorate. We observe holidays. We don't commemorate holidays, we observe holidays. Commemoration means exactly what it sounds like, that we assign value. Observe means that there's an intrinsic value and we are observing it and following the protocol that the day itself demands of us. So, what is the Hanukkah energies? Look at this. Always go up, right? Hanukkah tells us, I'm sorry, I keep on getting a little behind on this slide show. But here, right, the wells that go throughout, right? But always go up. Each night of Hanukkah, we add a candle, right? How do you apply this? How is that music to your life? What is the message? What is the note that reverberates from that you always are adding a candle, right? Stagnation is not an option. Jewish life must grow, right? One element that Hanukkah is intrinsically giving us, self-sacrifice, right? The Maccabees fought against impossible odds, risking everything for what they believed. There are we must too stand for truth, even when it costs us, right? So on and so forth, reading through all of these, right? Last one, for example, the Hanukkah lights are meant to shine outward onto the street. This teaches us a lesson for our whole lives. Judaism is not meant to be something that we only do inside. It's something that we do loud and proud and let the world know, because we have to share the light that Judaism has with the world. So
It's a mitzvah to put it in your window.
Sure. Even though Chabad does it in their doorway, but then we put something else in the window too, and then we put up big menorahs all over. That's not a mitzvah in the Torah. That's just Chabad to put up the 8-foot menorahs in city squares. But the message is definitely from the Torah. The idea of Persumi Nisa. So what do I do with all this information? This is a beautiful thought, but how do I end up doing something practical with this? And yes, the answer is you have to create for yourself and spend time with this, because this is so intrinsic to proper Jewish observance. What I'm about to say right now is I'm going to say that you have to invest in this study because it's not good enough to live a purposeful life. You need to live a purposeful, resonant life. You need to be in resonance with the fabric of reality, with the fabric of time. Just like you can't say, oh, I observed this day perfectly. I had a latke on Yom Kippur. No, that's not observing Yom Kippur properly. Yom Kippur has its protocol. Hanukkah has its protocol. Every day, and we have to understand that it is up to us to learn and to know how to establish this. Every day of the week has a unique protocol. Really, every hour of the day has a unique protocol. Every day of the month, every month has a unique. So Tuesday, the 12th of Cheshvan of the year 5781 is going to be very different than Thursday, the 15th of ER in the year 5786. And to a certain degree, we need to brush up on what those differences should be. How do we tap into these things? What these things represent? And perhaps one could say one of the greatest contributions of the greatest Jewish leader of modern history, the Rebbe, was that he brought that into sharp focus, always talking about what the day of the week was, what the day of the month was, what the message behind that is. Turn your attention to the screen. So what happened? I'll turn off. I'm just trying to get louder volume on this. I think this is sorry.
Freshly charged with its own mission. Our job is to live with the times, to discover what today is meant to bring out in us. How do we do that? Think of 3 easy steps. Step 1, notice the layers of time. Every moment has many layers. The day of the week, the daily section of the weekly Torah portion, the month of the Jewish calendar, the present year. Special events like birthdays and anniversaries. The Rebbe emphasized that each of these factors carries a personal lesson for that day.
Und Hayemi Bedet zwischen der Sein Liefnisse und mehrere Jahren Liefnisse, aber Pikena Sekunde selber Tag, im selben Chede, und miteinander ja, ist er miteinander Linien, einander erwiderte.
Step 2, tap into the power in the date. The Rebbe often pointed out that since creation is precise and purposeful, each weekday echoes the story of its creation. For example, Wednesday, when the sun and moon were formed, is a day to increase and share light.
Je finden mir Zachister bei jedem Horevi in der 1. Tag vom Woch, was damals sagt, wenn der Rebischter hat beschaffen, es hamoir ha-Gott, die Sohn, was hamoir ha-Gott und die Levone.
Each month adds its own energy. For example, Nisan brings freedom and miracles, and the 18th of any month highlights Chai, power of life.
Die Venegas verkund a Tov, was da Chai, in Chedisch, der Mond ist noch einmal auf die Linie von Lebendiger.
Step 3, find the order of the day. The Rebbe loved the image of God as our commander-in-chief and us as his soldiers. Each day receives a unique assignment from our commander-in-chief. He urged us to live with the times, drawing guidance from the daily section of the weekly Torah portion. Like a soldier checking the day's orders first thing in the morning, we look to Torah to discover today's mission.
Aber soll leben mit der Zeit und Masbir gewähren hat das Menschen mit der Chilek von Parshas HaShavua, wo sie in der Parshe Gufe verbunden mit dem Tag.
Instead of letting time slip by, We should fill each moment with purpose and joy. The real question isn't just what time is it? It's what is this time for? When we live this way, every day becomes a timely gift, waiting to be opened and put to good use.
Let me give an example, Rabbi. Because I'm to play the violin, and I was at a friend's house, and they asked me to play this very emotional piece, and I played it for them. Then another friend arrived just as I finished, and he said, "Oh, I missed it. Can you play it again?" So I replayed the same piece. My other friend said it sounded like a different piece, because who I was at that different moment in time changed the way I played the piece.
100%, exactly. And ultimately, every one of us can talk about the fact that we battle this. We battle this element of sameness in our lives. But the truth is, if you just spend a little time, as the Rebbe, could you imagine you live like this? You woke up, today's Wednesday, the 18th of the month, right? Of this year of my life. And you were just cognizant of that, then where's the sameness? Every moment is its own unique treasure to be. Every moment is a gem. Every moment is a unique gem to touch and engage in its own way. And you can even then face tsaris in a different way. Today's its own thing. Today's its own. So today my agenda is to overcome this particular difficulty. But it's not going to be what defines every moment of my life. Every moment is its own little package. This is the little spicy moment. This is a spicy moment of my life. But this is called living life with purpose. If you really understand that every moment is intrinsic, if purpose applies not just to you but it applies to time, and you can live time purposefully, then every moment is filled with an incredible vitality, the kaleidoscope of life. And as I said, here is a masterwork, what you have in your books. And anybody who's on the Zoom that hasn't picked up your book, you need to pick it up just for this reason. Because what it here is such a comprehensive uh, um, layout of the Jewish map of time, starting with the days of the week. What is Sunday? How is Sunday unique from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Talking on each one of the things. It's not by accident that God created the world in 6 plus 1 day. In other words, 7 days. There are 6 sefirot associated, right? Plus the 7th day, which is Malchut. And each one of the days of creation, God imbued this element. And it so perfectly lines up. Chesed, which means projection, is the day that God created projection, not light. Light he created as photons and particles and waves. That's day 4 when he created the sun and moon. He created the concept of projection. And on the second day, his Gvura's discipline is the day that he created separation, right? He split the heavens and the seas above and the seas below. Each one of the days of creation carries this forward. You know that you're not meant to do a bris. I'm sorry, not a bris. You're not meant to get married on certain days of the week. Oh, everybody, this keeps on happening.
Hello, Rabbi. We lost the connection.